Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a stack of subscriber-submitted encounters in front of me, and I also have some very terrifying video clips to share with you. Before we jump into all that, though, a couple links. As y'all know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. The merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go, and they definitely do matter. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? All right, folks, like I said in the intro, stack of subscribers submitted experiences and some very terrifying and kind of mind-blowing video clips. I don't have affiliation with these clips. I didn't take them. I'm sharing them with you so you can decide how you feel about them. But with that, let's start off with a subscriber-submitted encounter. So this subscriber had shared with us his Sasquatch encounter when he was a teen. He was in a Halloween costume and playing a prank on his friends in the woods, backed into a Sasquatch, took his mask off, and both of them had a shocked look on their face. Jeff from Georgia, or Steel Redneck, took off running, and the Squatch kind of just looked at him with a shocked look on his face. Well, here is his Dogman encounter. From 2019 to 2022, I've seen a Dogman while delivering pizza to a particular neighborhood. The first 3 times I've seen him, it was way out in the neighborhood, sitting between a field and a small tree line facing the neighborhood. I was leaving. It had to be at least 7 to 7.5 feet tall. The level of the ground was a foot to 1.5 feet lower than the street level, and the Dogman's eyes were eye level with me and my truck. When I saw the Dogman on those deliveries, it was never the same day or the same time of day. The first 3 times seeing this thing, it looked like a huge German shepherd with a little bit of timber wolf in the face. The last time I saw the thing, it looked a bit different. I don't think it was the same one. It was kind of mangy with patches of fur or missing fur. It kind of looked like a werewolf from Underworld, but with more fur, but patches missing, some bald spots. Some spots looked like hair was ripped out and there was some dried blood. One of your most recent videos reminded me of it and creeped me out, not to mention gave me a nightmare that very night. Anyway, 2019, 2020, and 2021, I only saw them as I was leaving the neighborhood and on the way back to the store. In 2022, I saw another one. I saw it walking from the field, which was cut down into a small tree line. The Dogman was in half the tree line, half out. Like the other 3 times, the Dogman was facing the neighborhood I had just come out of. I hope I do not see these things this year. About 2.5 to 3 weeks ago, I found out a few of my customers had been listening to your channel. I was delivering pizza, and as I pulled up to the customer's house, he met me on the street so he could surprise his family with dinner. As I got out of my truck, he could hear me listening to one of your uploads. He proceeds to tell me he listens to your channel as well. He looked at me a little funny, then asked if I had ever been interviewed by you. I thought about telling him. No, however, I refused to lie about it or be embarrassed about my encounters. The moment I said yes, he picked up both of my interviews with you because he could recognize my voice. He even recognized my Bigfoot encounter when you reread it recently. He then told me that he and a few of the neighbors have seen more than a few dogmen for the last 6 years. They have been seen throughout the neighborhood late at night and early in the morning. He said he refused to even walk to the mailbox unarmed. As he signed the credit slip, I noticed that he had a .357 on his hip. He told me to be safe on the back roads in the area and left me a $50 tip. I have not seen another dogman at all this year. Not sure if I want to. My friend's dad had a Bigfoot encounter when he was around 12, maybe 13 years old. I'm not sure of the year. However, my buddy is 45, so that would put his dad at 69, 70. Okay, from his dad's point of view, this encounter happened in North Georgia. My friend's dad was visiting his grandparents for the summer. He got up at around 8 in the morning and gathered up his fishing equipment. He set everything on the front porch and walked back inside to eat breakfast. After breakfast, he grabbed his hunting knife, picked up his fishing gear, and proceeded to walk about 5 miles to the spot off the river where he had fished. His grandfather showed him this spot, and he has never fished anywhere else. He had been fishing for a couple of hours and had caught anywhere from maybe 3 to 7 fish. He had them on his stringer while continuing fishing. He stops the fish to quick eat lunch. After he had ate lunch, he continued fishing, and about 10 minutes later, he ended up falling asleep. He ended up sleeping for maybe 4.5 hours and realized it's getting late. He gathered his gear and his fish up and started his way back. What he did not realize was there was no sound in the woods whatsoever. He had been walking for maybe 10 minutes. During the first 10 minutes, he had the feeling of being watched. But every time he looked around, he did not see anything or anyone at all. So he kept walking while the light was fading. He caused some movement off to his left, which ended up being a bird, still not realizing there was no sound until he heard a branch break from behind. Now, there are brown bear in North Georgia woods, but he has never seen a bear. About 35 yards behind him, there was an 8-foot reddish-brown humanoid staring down at him. He then took off running as fast as he could. All he could hear were trees and branches breaking behind him. He ended up dropping all his fishing gear and his fish, and this damn thing continued chasing him. Just as he was getting close to his grandfather's house, he has to jump a ditch. The ditch was maybe 5 feet across and definitely not easy for a kid his age to jump. As he jumped, he felt something huge swipe him back and barely miss him. He continues running down the dirt driveway, screaming for his granddad. The moment he hit the front door, he collapsed, blacking out. Once he came to, he explained his experience to his grandfather. His grandfather explained he had seen a wood booger, or a Bigfoot. He told his grandparents his legs and back were sore and cut up from the briar bushes he had run through. Upon inspection, his grandparents saw not only was he scraped up, but it appeared there had been a large handprint on his back. Since it was too dark to retrieve his things, they waited until first light. That morning, his grandfather grabbed his 12-gauge and proceeded to retrace the steps. However, when they got to where he had jumped, the first thing they saw was a huge handprint deep in the mud off on the side of the wall of the ditch. His grandfather immediately took him home, called some friends and family, and proceeded to hunt this thing down. About 5 to 6 hours later, the grandfather and uncle come walking through the front door. They found his fishing gear, which was trashed, and the fish were, of course, missing. His granddad proceeds to tell them and the grandmother that they could follow the entire path that this thing chased him from the point where he had started running. He described that it was like a tank or a bulldozer barreling through the woods. There were trees 3 to 4 inches in diameter spun around and snapped off like nothing. From the point forward, he was no longer allowed in the woods by himself. Last, but definitely not least, the lore on the area where I had my Bigfoot encounter, plus the very last time I saw a Bigfoot. The lore around the boat launch in Twiggs County. Not sure of the year, supposedly this was in the 70s. About 5 guys with their hunting dogs were camping around this boat landing. They had a nice bonfire going, and they were getting drunk. Later that evening, they heard noises in the woods. The dogs retreated under one of the trucks and would not come out. This creeped one of the guys out, so he packed up and left. Got his dog in the truck. Nobody heard a thing from the other 4 for about a week. When someone finally went to check on them, the campsite was destroyed. There was blood all over. There were 18-inch footprints everywhere. The tents had blood on them, supposedly. The cars were damaged, and one was supposedly upside down. The dogs, however, were freaked out but fine. After a year-long investigation, nothing was ever found again. This was lore about the place. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but this is what's been told about this place in Twiggs County. Now, this is the area where I had my Bigfoot encounter, and yes, I have seen it from a safe distance since. The last time I saw the Bigfoot encounter was uneventful. My ex-girlfriend and I were leaving a bonfire one night. I was heading home for 2 reasons. One, I had to get up for work early. The other reason, you can probably guess. I was with my girlfriend. Anyhow, I had to stop in the middle of the dirt road in the woods. A deer was looking off to the side behind my car. I tried honking the horn to scare it off. Just as it runs, my ex looks out the back window and sees a large Sasquatch's face lit up by the brake light. She screams, "The devil is behind us," and I look. She buckles the seatbelt to step over to the center console and slams her foot down on top of my foot on the gas pedal with all of her weight, almost crashing into a tree. I try calming her down to no avail. I got her back on her side of the car, buckle her up, and drive out of the woods, trying to explain that we had just seen a Bigfoot, not a devil. Needless to say, she did not believe. I dropped her off at her house, and I went home and had some Jack and Coke until I passed out. Needless to say, I did not make it to work that day. Jeff, or /Steel Redneck, is a super nice guy. He's been with the channel for a while, shared his Bigfoot experience, like I said. And if you guys had not heard it, I'll quickly give you a just a brief kind of what happened. Him and his friends have this spot that they used to go to and play pranks on each other. One night, they were young and went out to scare their girls. He had been out there prior to the girls and the friends coming in a Halloween costume. Needless to say, they get there. He's in the woods, backs up into somebody or something, thinks it's his friends or one of the girls, turns around and takes the mask off, and it's a Bigfoot. And the Bigfoot looks at him like, "Why are you taking your face off?" His dad had knew about these creatures, I'm guessing from his granddad telling him the story. But yeah, Twiggs County is notorious for very strange sightings all throughout North Georgia. So thanks for sharing that with us. I do appreciate it. This first video clip is a winter Bigfoot experience. Guy's out in the woods walking around and kind of starts to hear some chatter, like the samurai chatter. Starts to notice movement in the distance and turns on his phone camera and catches this. It is very strange. You can see this thing moving a tree. It could be a person. It might be a Bigfoot. I don't know. The tree does appear to be very large. Not a huge tree, maybe 4 to 6 inches in diameter, but it's a big enough tree to where a human would really have an issue kind of pushing it. Check the video clip out. All right, like I said, I don't have any affiliation with these videos. I'm just sharing them to see how you guys feel about them. Like I said, this guy went out in the woods, wintertime, hears some kind of samurai chatter, and takes his phone out and gets this video. Very strange. Today's second encounter. This is another subscriber submitted experience. He did not give me permission to share his name, so I will not. By 2010, I had reconnected with my estranged brother while I was still in college in Abilene, Texas. We had settled some differences that were family related, and he had invited me to come stay with him for a while where he lived in Eureka, Montana, which is just a stone's throw away from the border to Canada. I've been all over Texas and the southern United States, but going up to Montana wasn't an experience all on its own, and it was wonderfully beautiful and an extremely different place altogether. I had no idea what to expect since I had never been that far north before, and I expected to be a frozen wasteland, and since we were going up there in November or December, I believed there was going to be plenty of snow, and I sent everything. I remember that day I arrived at his house. The moment I got out, I distinctly remember, shit, it's so cold, I'm literally going to die here. But that was just me being in my 20s and hadn't seen a lot of the world up north at that point. Anyway, something that's a little relevant to this experience is my brother was the type of person who had become a prepper. He had gotten into some conspiracy theories, and since he made good money as a contracted computer programmer with a company in Dallas, he was remotely able to work from the cabin we both now lived in the outskirts of Eureka, Montana. And when I mean a prepper, I'm talking he owned dozens of guns, food rations, had an own room dedicated to reloading ammunition, and all kinds of interesting stuff like that. I wasn't so much into things like that, but he was definitely convinced that something was happening with the government. For me, it was extremely fun to go up there and experience a part of the world that I had never experienced before. There were several weeks where I would hike with my AR-15 into the woods, and I would illegally cross into Canada, heading towards what looked like a ranger fire tower outpost thing, and once I got to a certain point, I would just hike back. I never felt threatened. I never felt anything bad at that point. I always felt comfortable because I had at least 2 sidearms with me at any given time. and I was very experienced outdoorsman since I was a very young man. But he very distinctly told me not to go exploring at night, and if I did, do not go without him, almost like he knew something. I distinctly remember he was very excited about buying some very expensive equipment again, since he was a hardcore prepper, and some of this equipment included night vision, infrared type scopes for some of the weapons that we would shoot. Sometimes I would even take them and just look outside the window at night, and I would see small packs of coyote yipping and playing very innocently, and it seemed like no big deal. I was really interested in figuring out the local mystery that happened, where some state troopers had found a group of several different animals all dead within a close proximity to each other. I want to say maybe 20 yards within each other. There were several dead coyotes, I think a moose, and maybe two, some fox and elk, and I believe a bear, but those details had been lost to time in my mind. But I distinctly remember it was a very weird situation that was very unexplainable, that all these different dead animals would be so close to each other, and the only thing we could find out about it was that reportedly they said it was a downed power line that had killed all of these animals in such a close proximity, which just sounded kind of fishy from the get-go. I would frequently go out with a shotgun trying to hunt turkey, but sometimes the conditions were not right, because every time I would step on the ground, the snow would sometimes be very crunchy, and the turkeys could hear when I was coming, so they always kept a distance from me. I finally got one day, whenever I woke up one morning and saw them out in the field directly outside my window. The thing about the house was that it was built on a sharp incline, because it was, I guess you'd say, on a mountainside, so there were two doors into the house, and each door was on a separate floor of this two-story building, if that makes sense. I usually resided on the first floor or bottom floor, and my brother resided on the top floor, which was his work area, bedroom, and kitchen. My area was the reloading room, storage for extra food and water, and where he kept servers and computers that he used for work. One morning I saw a flock of turkey, or whatever they're called, that I had been hunting for over a week. At this point I was so damn determined to get one that just minutes after waking up I saw this, and before I even got my wits about me, I slid open the sliding glass door, aimed the AR-15 out, and shot a turkey from maybe 125 yards away. Keep in mind, I'm inside shooting this gun with the barrel pointed outside. And that was extremely huge, stupid mistake, because I was not wearing any kind of ear protection and didn't even think of that fact. I was indoors doing this. I was so hell-bent on getting one of those damn turkeys that I literally sounded like a shotgun blast to both ears at the same time. But I finally did get my turkey, and I was really happy to cook it up that morning, even though I could barely hear what was said to me, which was sort of funny detail for later. That night I did, like I normally do, my usual routine, which is play a little bit of music, practice on my guitar, work out on a weight set, and eat a good dinner. And then in the room that I was in, there was a wood-burning stove that I always would put a pot of water on to keep the humidity comfortable. I always kept a stack of wood a safe distance, but close inside, and then mattress lying on the floor in the corner. I would always fall asleep with a few firearms beside me. Here's where everything begins. Right in the middle of the night, I wake up because I have to pee. So instead of running upstairs to the bathroom, I figure, hey, I'm out in the middle of nowhere and nobody cares. I'm just going to walk out the sliding glass door, which is the only entrance on this level of the building, and just use the restroom in the snow. So I open the door, and the chill of the cold hits me, and I mean it's extremely cold, in the negatives for weeks at this time, but it didn't really matter because I was going to throw some more wood on the stove, and it was only going to be for a few seconds to pee. Aside from the feel of the slight breeze, the night was silent, too silent. Oddly silent, but I didn't care at that point. But in those few seconds, I heard crunching of footsteps in the snow. Now, where the door was about 3 to 4 feet from the corner of the house. On the same corner where the wood-burning stove had the smoke pipe exit going through the building and up and out into the atmosphere. Almost like if an animal wanted to get warm, it could come close to the side of the building and that pipe for the exhaust smoke. So I'm literally standing there trying to pee, and I hear something walking up directly to the side of the building, less than 5 feet away from me. And then the walking stops. At this point in time, there is at least 14 inches of snow on the ground. I stood there for a couple of minutes not knowing what to do because this was not a normal sound. This was obviously, very obvious, the sound of something walking on 2 legs, very heavy, in long strides, and then it just stopped. And where it stopped was no more than 5 to 6 feet away from me. I slowly backed into the building, slid the door closed, and locked it, and figured I had 2 options. Either run to my AR-15 or run upstairs to my brother, who also had a multitude of weapons around him at the same time. I chose the latter. I took off running upstairs and literally jumped into bed with my brother, obviously startling him awake, and told him exactly what had happened. He kept trying to call BS on me, saying that I was trying to pull a joke on him since I was the younger brother. That usually pulled jokes on him, but he slowly came to realize that I was legitimately scared because I refused to go back downstairs and sleep in my own bed. I demanded to sleep next to him in his bed, with us being armed and safe together. At least so I felt, which he thought was kind of weird, because obviously we were brothers, but we are both in our 20s and 30s respectively, so it is kind of strange sleeping in the same bed. I was that scared, so he obviously figured out something was very wrong. The next day, after I persisted about the incident had happened, him being the type of person that he was, he obviously had a series of cameras set up around the property. The morning after, I went outside with him, and we clearly saw deep tracks in the snow where it looked like a man or something was walking with 2 legs. And if it was a man, it would have had a hard time walking in that snow that deep, 12 to 14 inches, depending on the area. There were deep tracks coming from directly north that came right to the house, right on the corner where I had just spoke of. When we both saw these tracks, I rejoiced in absolute terror, to be honest, because at least he believed in my encounter, so we decided to check the camera footage. Now, being so isolated as he was, he had not really kept his cameras as up to date or in shape as he could have, because he was putting more money into prepping for food shortage or putting money into high-powered weapons, gold and silver and such. A few of the cameras didn't work, but there was one that did clearly show a dark, absolutely huge, upright, bipedal, wolf-like creature with pointed ears and hands/claws that almost dragged onto the snow, walking directly to the corner of the house and stood beside the exhaust vent of the wood-burning stove at the corner of the house. There was no real way of telling exactly when I left compared to when it left, but the video showed something walking up and just standing there and then eventually turning around and using the same exact path to walk back into the woods, and at that point, out of camera view. I tried to examine the snow tracks, but since the same path was used in the deep snow, go both directions, it was very messy type of a print that was not very discernible, but looked like a long-heeled type print with maybe a dog paw at the end. But again, just to be honest, it was very hard to make it out because of how deep the snow was and the fact that it used it double tracked, plus the extra snow on top of the tracks that had fallen in from the snow bank. Whenever I push the issue to my brother, he just keeps telling me the same thing, which was to shut up about it, pretend it didn't happen, let it go, and I would be all right as long as I didn't go and do anything wrong in the woods or violate any of the rules of nature, which was things like trophy hunting or killing without using the kill as food, or being reckless and destroying land around us. I didn't quite understand what he meant by that, but I had an idea, and I have an even better idea now that I'm older, which was to respect the land that you were in and respect the fact that you might not be the only person or thing that inhabits that place. The only thing I smelled was just the smell of snow and trees, barely, because there was almost no wind. When I heard the footsteps, I was more curious than anything, but at first I was not terrified. The only time I really felt any type of fear was whenever I understood that it was literally standing around the corner, almost within an arm's reach from where I was standing, peeing. I could hear what almost sounded like a very deep, long inhale and exhale of a breath. No growling or no infrasound or anything like that. The fear that I felt was internal. It came from my own body, not understanding the situation instead of perceiving a threat externally, if that makes sense. I never felt that I was threatened or in any kind of danger. I just felt fear at the fact that something was so close to me and I obviously couldn't see or understand. And I was completely weaponless at the time, in the middle of the woods, in one of the most remote places in the United States. Thanks, Jeff. This next video clip that we're going to see is a strange creature on a roof on a porch in Australia. The person that took the video thinks that maybe it's a yowie. If you look, at first when I saw the video, I'm just going to be open with you. I don't like usually talking about clips like this at all, but when I first saw the video clip, I was like, that's a human. But then I started to think, that roof doesn't look like it'd be able to support a human's weight. Plus, look at the feet. Look at the feet on this thing. Look at the hands on this thing. And look at how skinny it is. I don't think it's a yowie. I myself believe it may be a crawler. But, once again, no affiliation. Check it out. All right, so I'm not really sure. There's a couple of things that I just want to point out quickly. To me, I don't feel like anything of any kind of weight would be able to be supported on that roof, a human or a yowie. If you look at the legs, if you look at the feet, the arms, the fingers, there's something off about this entity, this creature, this possibly a crawler. To me, it doesn't look like a yowie would To me, it's just too skinny to be a human. But the hands are what freaked me out after watching it probably 10 different times. And then I noticed the feet and I was like, yeah, something's weird about this one. Gonna share it with the folks on the channel and get your guys' opinion. Anyway, here is tonight's last subscriber submitted encounter. And this one comes to us from the country of Israel. How cool is that? Hey Jeff, my name is Redacted, and I've loved listening to your podcast either at work or while I'm driving home or while I'm sitting in the evening with a cup of coffee. Here are the details of my encounter. I'm from Israel, and there are not many woods here in Israel, as there are in the United States. However, my encounter happened in an area called Yin Hasafet, which is an open area like a meadow that is surrounded by thick forest with tall pine trees. My family and I were traveling there on a sunny day. Back then I was 20 years old, and I was not married nor had any kids. So it was midday and we had already finished eating lunch, which was a lamb barbecue, as it's known to be famous and cultural meal to have on the outings here in Israel. And I decided that I would like to take a walk on the trail that is located just across from where my family was sitting. The weather was amazing, and I was enjoying my walk so much that I didn't notice that I'd gone a little too far from my family and the other people sitting in the area. The first thing that made me snap out of my haze was that the birds chirping and the sounds of nature had suddenly stopped. Not faded away slowly, just stopped, like someone had pressed the off button. Now, mind you, I was not carrying any food with me, but it is well known for the smell of barbecue to stick to you if you are close enough. So I took that into consideration along with the fact that I had no weapon on me as well. I decided to turn around and walk back, so I did, and I felt eyes on me the whole time. Now, here in Israel, there are no bear, no cougar, no wolves, or any other large predators. The maximum that you would come across is a coyote or a stray dog. Usually, none of the two scare me. Yet, this time I did feel threatened, so I started to look around across the tree line by my side and the tall grass on the other. I kept scanning slowly until I saw a hand on one of the trees. It was a human-like hand, like a man's, but very hairy. The fingers were long. I could see black claws holding on to the tree. I followed the hand down to see a crouching figure. It was crouched, but it was sideways, not facing me directly, and I noticed it was a brownish red. It almost blended into the trees. It sat very still with its German shepherd head focused on something. It never seemed to notice me, thankfully. I tried to distinguish the rest of its body, but it was hidden behind a small brush. The eyes were longer than a dog's or wolf's. The eyes looked like cat eyes from the side. If you look closely, you'll see a cat's eye kind of have a round lens. So this creature had that type of thing. I didn't notice the color of the eyes, but I did notice how big they were. At that moment, it kind of twitched its ears and turned its head to look at me. So quickly I gasped. It seemed like I scared it too, because it stood up on its hind legs, turned around, and dashed into the woods. When it did that, I managed to take a quick look at its body. It had a lean body, not too much muscles going on, but yet it looked like someone who had worked out. The eyes were really, really big and went sideways like a fox or a wolf's eyes, but bigger and pure yellow toned. The fur was pretty thin, not shaggy, more like a Doberman. But when it turned around, I saw its bushy tail. It was so quick that it looked like a brown blur passed by, and it made no sound at all. No funny smell like most people would notice. Nothing out of the ordinary, and that was what scared me. The creature was super quiet, and it could have been stalking me without me even noticing. That was my encounter. I leave it to you to handle it any way you feel like. Thank you for your time. Wow. I I really enjoy narrating subscriber encounters, but when I get an encounter from a different country, it really blows my mind because I really don't feel like my channel is that big to reach out to that many people. You know, Israel. It's just really amazing. And I truly appreciate this person for sharing their experience. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. I do appreciate it. Guys, here is the last video clip. It's definitely a very strange one. And, well, you guys check it out. All right, folks, very strange video clip. The horse stops. Everybody kind of looks around the horse, the rider, and he spots this thing that could be an alien, could be a crawler, or it could be a human in a mask. The face to me looks small. It may be a crawler, but I don't know. My opinion isn't what matters here. It's your guys' opinion. With that being said, I hope you all enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. Your support is what makes this channel so special and what continues to make it grow and go. With that being said, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on your children, your pets, your loved ones, and your friends. Share the information that we share with each other every day. Share it with the people that you care about to keep them safe. And God bless you all.